Welcome to From Pixels to Celluloid, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of video game adaptations.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new episode of From Pixels to Celluloid, a podcast about video game adaptations. I'm one half of your host for today, the Hypersonic 55, and I'm joined by my evergreen homie from the other side of the planet.
Hey, it's Vincent from Canada. Hey, what's up? I should work on that.
That was a wonderful introduction. Like, I never know what you're going to say, so I'm just like, okay, let's just see what he says. I try to do a soft introduction and then just see what you come up with.
Sure, let's do that.
But yeah, thank you for joining us for another episode, people. We've got a bunch of little topics to cover. The main one today will be our spoiler-based review for the Super Mario Galaxy movie that came out not too long ago. We've also got a little bit of news to cover in terms of Alanah Pearce and her production company Charred Pictures, and we've also got the recent news about Metal Gear Solid finally having a director, or should I say directors, but they are coming in a form that I don't think a lot of people expected. And then we've also got some smaller segments that we'll be covering throughout the episode, but we'll cover those when we get to it. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're going to step into the zone of spoilers with our discussion on the Super Mario Galaxy film. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, then you would have known that I think for me in particular, I had a lot of hype, but also a lot of fear going into the Mario Galaxy movie because Mario Galaxy, the original from 2007 on Wii, is one of my favorite games. From the atmosphere to the level design to the music to the presentation. And as one of the games that has the smallest yet notable amount of story and lore, I was very curious to see how that would be translated into a new Illumination movie. Now, going back to the original Mario Brothers movie from 2023, that film had presentation down to a T. It was a fabulous looking movie. It was a wonderful sounding movie. But beyond that, characters and story, the core elements of what makes films so compelling, non existent, poor, not that well executed. And the amount of licensed music in there drove me insane. So I had fear going into this new one, but I had hope. But considering what this film is, I shouldn't have been surprised by the end result. Just in terms of before we get into spoiler specifics, I'll literally just say this. The Mario Galaxy film, once again, when it comes to the presentation, is a beautiful looking movie. It's stunning, and the music from Brian Tyler borrows elements from the Mario Galaxy games along with other compositions from the Mario games, and that's all fantastic. But when it comes to the story, it seems like it's even less than what came before, less coherent, less structured. It's overstuffed with so much stuff, and it just doesn't seem to know when to pause to allow whatever elements it's trying to communicate to the audience to simmer and resonate. It's got its foot on the gas, constantly going from scene to scene. And by the end of the movie, I'm just like, fun was had for sure, but at what cost? So yeah, Vincent, I'm just curious, your general thoughts about the Mario Galaxy movie before we go into nitty gritty.
Well, it really just feels like one 10-minute TikTok video stitched together to form some cohesive movie. As in, every new 10-minute scene was a completely different film. It's like a long robot chicken episode, but you're the joke, I guess, the viewer. But as I said, I watched it on a matinee. Just a lot of kids in the theater, and they seem to enjoy it. And it's something that behind me were a couple of preteens just basically trying to predict the next scene and would basically show off to each other how much Mario lore they know, and to the point where sometimes I feel like I'm watching a director's commentary with these two kids in the background, And there you go. There's your target audience, right? But yeah, as I said, it just feels like a long robot chicken. Like it's like it's like a robot chicken movie, but all with Mario characters, each with its own like episodic plot. While like just the cohesion was basically all over the place. Just like new characters were introduced. What's that? Nostalgia and elderberry like soup was served basically. Um, and I was loving it until like you get out of the film and it just feels like I went for a binge in a fast food restaurant, and and then basically after that, I just there's a lot of emptiness after all that fun. But I wouldn't say that like I didn't enjoy myself. I did enjoy myself, even with the kids' commentary behind me. It's just if you are looking for a cohesive film, this is not the film to go to. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we're going to do now, we're going to dive into spoiler-based territory. So again, if you haven't seen the film, leave and then come back later on. Or if you have seen the film, obviously stick around because we're going to be touching on a few more specifics. Now, the problem with this film is that there is so much stuff in here. Trying to touch upon all of it would be insane. But I'm just going to touch upon all of the sort of key details that stood out to me because I think between the two of us, I'm probably the guy that has like more knowledge when it comes to like, Mario specific stuff. So what I'll touch upon is just like the overstuffed nature of this film because with the first Mario film, it was messy but still straightforward. But with this film, you've got Rosalina in space being the guardian of the stars. Bowser Jr. is coming to get her because she has powers that he can siphon away to power up this machine that he's always wanted to utilize because it was something that his dad told him about when he was younger. Because they have a plan that they were going to rule the galaxy together as father and son, like in a sort of Star Warsy kind of way. When Peach finds out about Rosalina being in trouble, her and Toad go off in space to try and like save her ass. So that means the Mario brothers, who also happen to come into contact with Yoshi, they have to try and keep the Mario Kingdom, the Mushroom Kingdom safe from everybody who's potentially going to invade. While that's happening, Bowser, who is slightly reformed in his tiny form, has this whole thing where he's like trying to adjust to this life of not being as villainous as he was before. But then when he comes into contact with his son, there's a sort of potential moral quandary about him going back to his old life, but also trying to appreciate these sort of new friends that he has. Peach and Toad are hanging around in space and also having to come into contact with Wart. What's the name of that other mouse dude and Birdo? As like they have this whole little underground like villain world that's going on, and God, even me just saying all that stuff is just it's exhausting. It's so much stuff. And then there's a weird tangent where they go to the one planet where the queen like bee lady from the from now I'm actually forgetting the name of that like honey hive like galaxy from it, again. I'm imploding because there's so much stuff going on in this movie and it's ridiculous. What is happening? I don't
What is
understand.
happening?
But you can see, ladies and gents, as I'm trying to talk about this film has so many things happening. And the way that the film decides to segment everything, it's like, okay, we're here with these characters, but now we're going back to these characters who are on the other side of the galaxy. Then there's some other stuff going on in this part of the galaxy. Eventually, certain things will line up, but then they'll sort of like space out and detract again. It's just like, where's your sense of cohesion? Where's your through line? And when you watch the film, especially once you get to the latter side of it, you realize how much of this stuff is so unnecessary. There's so much superfluous material. And you could have shaved about maybe 10 to 20 minutes off of this film, cut a bunch of like, subplots and other characters out, and you could have had something way more focused. That's the word I would say that this film isn't. Oh, no. This film is unfocused. That's the word I'm looking for. Unfocused would be the word.
Yeah, Kurt really summed it up, the whole robot chicken style format, like how everything is just like wrapped together. Because yeah, you start off the film, and then you run into Yoshi, and then now Yoshi's their best friend, and basically plot device If you need to get out of something, Yoshi will get them out of it. I was just waiting for the moment when like Mario basically like betrays Yoshi, just like kicks him off to do that extra jump. I was just waiting for that moment, and then Donald Glover would be like, "Yo, boy, what's up, Mario?" It's me, Yoshi. Yeah, I was just waiting for that moment, but it didn't happen. You can only hope for so much. But that's what the film kind of pushes for, right? Like you have all the colorful stuff in the wacky moments and just non-stop action, just to keep the kids entertained. And I guess the people on their phones entertained, right? Like you don't need, and that's the best part. It's like it's a perfect movie to watch with a phone. You can go scroll your TikToks or whatever you kids are into these days, and like catch up with your snaps, and then you look up, and then you really didn't miss anything. Because even like actual plot lines, such as the whole Bowser wanting to reconnect with his son because his son was in a he basically was an absentee dad, but then the son really idolizes the dad, and then basically that whole kind of like plot line has been like easily completed, so that conflict was gone, and then now the whole Bowser trying to like basically turn on his new friends, but I don't know if it's really friendship. Like I really think this is Stockholm syndrome,
That's a
like
fair point.
it's like I think like Mario and Luigi at that point were just like, no, this guy's too dangerous to be left alive, right? But like they need to keep him alive for some weird reason, just to have a sequel, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it basically worked, right? When he betrayed Mario and Luigi, I really didn't, that's basically where it's gonna go, right? Because as much as Benny Safdie did Bowser Jr. a lot of gravitas, it just seemed like it's not the same presence as Bowser, right? Until he came back as the big bad again. Kind of reminds me of the whole Voltron thing when they got rid of the main big bad, and then basically the prince whatever just didn't carry the same amount of weight as the original big bad, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically how I felt about it. And then the other through line was the whole Rosalina and Peach storyline, which they kind of touch upon it, and then they kind of let us forget about it. We just go with this whole wacky thing, and then we go back, and oh, that's still a thing, right? And in the end, I guess like the whole theme of the princess saving herself and saving another princess, I guess, just to divert that trope, and it's pretty cool in a way. And I'd say, but that's the thing though. As you said, there's no through line. Like every single new 10-minute segment, it's its own little thing, right? And then
Yeah.
when they bring back like a past plot point, you just seem to be, oh, that's still going on because last thing I checked, they're doing some baby dinosaur freaking Super NES scope blasting thing, right? Like, okay, cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's really hard to reconcile while the one inside it, like the little the kid Vince inside of me just going, oh my god, that's like from Super Mario 2. Like, oh my god, like you got the Super Nintendo scope thing. I guess that's what they're trying to do, for the poor parents that have to accompany their kids to watch this movie. They just basically go, okay, like, do you remember this? Like, do you remember this piece of nostalgia? So I guess once in a while the parents would like stop checking their Microsoft Teams and just go, oh, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to like the movie. That's basically all I want to say.
Yeah, and
But it's really difficult to do so.
I'm pretty much in the same boat because the thing is, a lot of the stuff in this film is for me and a lot of other, like, Mario and Nintendo fans because they've got references up the wazoo all over the place. Some of it big, some of it small, some of it's audio, and some of it's visual. You don't know how much joy I and a few other people in the cinema I had when Mr. Game & Watch showed up with Luigi, like, using that magic paintbrush, and that's what he came up with, Mr. Game & Watch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is that dude? No way. That's crazy, man. And even though Nintendo technically like ruined the surprise, Star Fox's segment in the movie was genuinely fab. I love the sort of random 80s aesthetic that they gave him, and the art direction and animation that they had for him telling his backstory with his crew. It was fantastic, and the fact that Brian Tyler also got to utilize those Star Fox themes for not only his backstory but also the segment when Fox is in space flying with the guys, and they had literally the old like music while they're going through the asteroid field. I'm like, this is insane. I'm having the best time of my life. It's great. And again, some of the subtle music references to various different like Mario Galaxy themes, whether it was like when Bowser Jr. had come to extract the castle from the Mushroom Kingdom, or during some of the battle sequences towards the end. I'm like, this is fab. Even the use of the Super Scope to turn the Mario Brothers into babies. I'm like, that's what you're using the Super Scope for? Okay. And the big T-Rex, which I think a lot of people would recognize as like one of the random dinosaurs that just showed up in Mario Odyssey. I was surprised to find him on the planet, but I'm like, hey, it's the big T-Rex. And even getting to see someone like Birdo and Wart from like, Super Mario Brothers 2 in their weird little underground area where a bunch of the other Mario villains just happen to hang out. I'm like, this is really fun. And then Rob, why is Rob there at the bloody airport? Like, with, I guess, the equivalent of what happened at the in Zootopia, you had that whole thing with I can't remember the name of that sloth character, but he had a similar thing where he was like trying to relay information, but it took him a long time to get it done. And Rob had a similar thing with this. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I wouldn't say this film was crazy funny to me, but there were definitely moments where I was having, a good laugh with some of these references, especially like Fox when he got to hang around with the rest of the Lumas and they all had little like jackets on. I'm like, this is fab. I'm having such a good time. And even bloody like Bowser Jr. summoning the sort of purple dragon thing from Mario Odyssey. I'm like, oh, wow. And the credits music, again, really good stuff. The post-credit scene, the last one, where they introduced my girl, Daisy, so happy. That was the sort of post-credit scene that, gets people like me super happy, because between like Daisy, Peach, and Rosalina, like Daisy is one of those who a lot of Mario fans feel like she's been like, sort of pushed aside, especially after Odyssey came out, because Pauline really started to blow up. So it feels like Daisy has been sort of relegated to the background because she's not really been a princess in her own game since, the old Game Boy title. The fact that she actually got some time in here might resurrect her, like, popularity with certain other Mario fans. But there's a whole lot of stuff in this film where I'm just like, okay, I wish you'd explain a little bit of that. Now, granted, in the world of animation, especially kids' movies, certain things just happen and you don't really question it. But in the Mario games with the Lumas, they're known to be these little creatures that if you feed them these things called star bits, they get filled up and explode and turn into different stuff. They can turn into planets, they can turn into those warp stars. And I really wish the film had done a little bit to explain some of these little mechanics, because it's fascinating stuff. It's really fun. And I find it interesting that with Rosalina, they sort of skipped over her sort of original backstory and rejiggered it for her and Peach to be sisters. And it was an interesting angle because for most Nintendo fans out there, they have been speculating about if there was any sort of relationship between Peach and Rosalina. Some people just think it was a mother-daughter relationship, but no, they're actually sisters instead. And they also have some weird power where if they touch hands, they can recreate life. I'm like, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more information about that. But then it also made it a little bit more clear why Peach is so capable of just beating up everybody and not having too much issues with it. Because I'm like, oh, she's a space princess and she has god tier powers as well. Okay, that makes sense. But this film, man, I think about it, and for everything I love, I'm just like, I wish you'd done so much more with the Bowser angle. Like him facing like moral and ethical, like, questions about where he stands with the Mario Brothers and whether he could be, a slightly different kind of like villain or anti-villain. That would have been fun. And like you said, with Bowser Jr. and Bowser, I thought there was going to be some conflict or like some sort of resentment about like, Bowser Jr. not being able to see his dad for how long. And maybe he's just thinking, oh, I'm going to be a better villain than you, Or maybe it was going to be a case where Bowser Jr. could be like, oh, you've gone soft, relegate him to a dungeon or something. I'm going to show you how to take care of the, take care of the plan that you should have done. And even after like Rosalina and Peach end up like, having their family hug or whatever at the end of the movie, I'm like, that's all? You're not going to be like, oh my God, sister, I haven't seen you forever. Like, I have so many things to tell you. I've been watching over you for years and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nothing. And one of the things I said in my other review on like Film Focus was that I feel like the Mario brothers were very reactionary. They didn't really have much to do in this movie. They felt like, supporting characters in like a film that has their name on it. And
Hmm.
Yoshi, he also felt like, I wouldn't say an afterthought because he had his moments for sure, but he was there and then he's just part of the crew. I'm like, so that's it. He gets his little montage and then that's it. And he's a part of the crew. I'm like, okay, cool, I guess.
Yeah. Well, one thing for sure is this movie's probably gonna get a sequel because it made its budget in the opening weekend, and I guess just the U.S. and Canada alone made up for all the marketing
Yeah.
and the gross worldwide, revenue. Yeah, well, we're gonna see a third movie. My only fear is I hope it doesn't like fall into it just joins the many many random 3D animation style movies where it just a sequel comes up and you just go okay, it's just one of these films, just another Mario film, like another Smurfs film. When were you ever excited about a Smurfs film or a Garfield film or a even the Minions, for crying out loud, like there's like a Minions movie coming out, and I'm like, I guess some kids would be like excited about it. But yeah, as you said, like there's gonna be the new one with the introduction of Daisy, right? So um, but what do you think? Like is Sonic falling into the same category now? Like you kind of go, okay, it's finished its trilogy, now they're going for a fourth film, I guess with Amy, right? So I don't know, like I guess with the Mario film, do you think at the rate that they're going right now, just judging from the second film, do you think there's still a way that they can still elevate the movie to just, basically take it away from this, I would call it the 3D animation slop category? It's going to be for the kids, but it's kind of better to send the babysitter off to go watch rather than you like hanging out with your kids to watch like another Mario sequel.
I don't know because the thing is, with the box office of the previous film and this current one, I think it's speaking volumes to the people at Illumination and Nintendo. They're like, okay, well, we've come up with this story. They had the same screenwriter for both films, so there was some consistency in terms of like that not being very good, but the idea that you can put this film out there and you'll get a bunch of the fans to support and then they'll drag whoever doesn't want to watch the film or not that interested in to get involved, that will literally just recoup all the money. And
Mm.
I don't want to look at this as purely a financial thing, but the thing is, I think they don't think about quality in the same way. Part of me, especially watching this film, is thinking, okay, this is looking like it's like they try to replicate the Mario game experience in a film where it's less about the story and it's more about the experience itself. What kind of stuff do you get to do in the Mario games would you be able to replicate in the movie in the most fun, exciting, and adventurous way? And in
Mhm.
that form, this film succeeds. But the story and character stuff being an afterthought, it just bothers me. And clearly it bothers a bunch of other people as well. However, the problem is, I think, I don't know how much you've seen online, but there's a lot of people defending the movie saying the Mario games don't have story and character stuff. So why should you expect that in the movie? I had a good time. I got all the references. The film looked and sounded great. That should be enough. And I'm like, but that shouldn't be like, the base level. Now, I'm not saying that like Mario needs to be like the most epic, well told story ever in the history of existence with like, characters that are going to make you cry and weep and, think about life after you step out the cinema. But I'm just asking for a little substance. because again, film and TV is a medium where like story and character are at the forefront, and presentation, that can only take you so far. And clearly there's an audience for this who are happy to take that, but there is this weird sort of conversation going on online right now about the nature of this film, and whether if you're like a fan, then that's for you, and anybody else should just shut up and enjoy the film or just not watch it. And
Mhm.
we saw this again with Five Nights at Freddy's, like,
Yep.
both of those entries as well, where the fandom, like, came to the defense of the film and said any critics who disliked it, they're not only not fans, but they're also idiots. And I'm like, the black and white nature of discussions of film is astronomically painful to my mind. Um, but also, again, the fact that people are defending the choice of it being just for kids as like the excuse to not expect more from the story and characters department is absurd, because you look at the stuff that's happening with Sony Pictures Animation with what they've done in the last few years. Even Pixar are starting to work their way back with really solid story and character material in their stuff. And it doesn't even have to be that hard or that deep. You just need to come up with like some story with themes and ideas that resonate not only with kids but also with parents. So it's stuff that not only the kids will be able to remember beyond the shiny, like, visuals, but also stuff that they'll want to talk about with their parents afterwards, or talk about with their friends, like, oh, this character went from being this to this. I found that interesting. But I don't know. I guess they're just not interested in going that much deeper with Mario, because again, I think they're just looking at Mario as the gameplay experience that it's always been and just trying to translate that into the film.
Mhm.
And unless they decide to change the writer and change the approach, because this film feels like it went for a bigger is better approach. But I think the only place this film has succeeded is taking away all that licensed music. There was like a fraction in this film. That made me very happy. But unless they just decide to change the writer and possibly scale down, or at least narrow the focus to having, like, is it either a new big bad or a new sort of adventure that requires a number of the characters but not too many. I don't know, because with Bowser and Bowser Jr. in jail, they may escape or someone might bust them out. But I'm trying to figure out what villains would be interesting enough to bring Bowser and Bowser Jr. either into the fray or leave them in the background while, the Mario characters contend with these new people. The only people I can think of right now would be Wario and Waluigi. Now, that would
Mhm.
be fun, but Wario is probably more villainous than Waluigi. Waluigi is more of a clown, but
Mhm.
depending on how they decide to do it, they could go with the plot line from Super Mario Land on the Game Boy,
Yep.
where Wario basically took over Mario's
Yeah.
castle and just ruled over that place for ages. And then it could just be a case of him just trying to get the castle back. But I don't know.
Well, anything could happen, and at this point, they've introduced Star Fox, so smash.
Man, I know a lot of people have been talking about that, especially with the fact that not only was Fox in there, but you also had Mr. Game & Watch temporarily and Rob. So you already have them along with the rest of the other Mario characters from the Mushroom Kingdom in this world. The only problem is they still haven't figured out how they'd integrate Zelda into this, because Link and Zelda, they already come into they'll show up in film for the first time in live action. So unless they're going to take those incarnations of the characters, or are going to pull a Spider-Verse and then just pull a set of those characters from another world and then bring them in, Smash Brothers is potentially interesting, but it depends on who they're going to bring in. If they're going to start off being primarily Nintendo based, like they was with like the first two games, you could get away with that. But if you're going to try and do Smash Brothers as in like, Brawl onwards, where we got guest characters, the licensing for that would be insane. And I don't know if Nintendo have the same sort of pull that Sakurai does, because Sakurai knows a bunch of people and he has a vision and a passion for this stuff to try and draw everything together. So I don't know. I It would be fun, but if it's under Illumination, I feel like a lot of the fun would be just seeing everything happen, but like, even less story than some of those games had. So I'm just like, I don't know. Unless they were going to try and do Subspace Emissary from Brawl, which would be crazy fun if they could pull it off. But I don't trust them. I don't trust them.
Well, one thing is, since it's Illumination, might I suggest Mario and Rabbids?
God, oh my god.
Then we show them Illumination, like basically does what they do best: create the fucking minions in Super Mario form, in the form of the Rabbids. Though, but
You know
that's
what?
just me.
I mean, to be fair, in some weird, twisted way, this could also help out Ubisoft because they've been in a pretty bad, like, sort of situation, you know, for a little while now. But if you were to introduce Ubisoft into the fold with the Rabbids as well, put them in Illumination and like find a way to make that sort of match work, um, it could be solid and it would be, financially beneficial to Ubisoft as well because it's like tangentially linked to them. But
Pretty much.
I
You
don't know.
basically are printing money.
Yeah, but I don't know how much the rabbits would resonate with audiences. Like, because if Mario 3, which was it, Jack Black's mentioned in the news recently that it might potentially be showing up in 2029, the
Yeah.
next like Mario potential Rabbids crossover, that would have to be at least maybe 2 or 3 years after that. And by that point, I don't know how many years deep we would have been with like Minions related stuff because we've had 4 Despicable Me films and like what? I think 3 or 4. Like I think
We're
the
getting another one this year, yeah.
yeah, so I can't remember
Another
if that
Minion
that new
films.
Minions film is the fourth one or the third one, but
Probably the fourth one at this point.
yeah,
At this point,
it's
who's
been
counting?
it's been 13 years. Like wait, hold on. Actually, no, I think the first one came out in 2010. I think.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh no. But yeah, I think by the time we'd gotten past like what the first solo Minions movie, I was sort of tapped out. But they've just kept going, and it just seems so redundant at this point that unless you're like some diehard Minions fan, these films aren't really doing much for anybody anymore. Everyone's sort of just looking to DreamWorks and Sony to pick up the slack in terms of the story and character department, along with having good visuals. But yeah, to bring it back to the Mario Galaxy thing real quick, man, I had high hopes but also notable fears, and I feel like both were realized. Again, the film looks good. It sounds fantastic, and there are like glimpses of a film that could have been great, but just too many tangents with random scenarios and characters that don't get the time of day. A story that just feels like it's all over the place. And like you said, once the film was over, I'm just like, I had fun. There were high highs. I was giddy on the inside, but I felt so hollow afterwards. I'm just like, I guess I don't know if I'll ever watch that again. Maybe just wait for someone to highlight all the fun clips on YouTube and then probably just watch it that way.
I guess so, yeah, at this point. Well, the good news is May is gonna be a massive month. We're gonna get Mortal Kombat 2, and at the end of the month, we're also getting Backrooms. So yeah, look
Yeah.
forward to it.
So what
Unless
I'll
you're
do,
into yeah, unless you're into The Devil Wears Prada too, but that's you, I guess.
yeah, that the advertising for that is definitely starting to ramp up. I guess I'll touch on Mortal Kombat 2 a little bit because they did release a new trailer, which is I think dubbed the final trailer. With that, you got a few more glimpses of Johnny Cage, a bit more of the humor, some more like little scenes of people fighting, doing some signature moves. But you also had a new version of the Techno Syndrome theme, which is technically the official theme song of Mortal Kombat, even though it was introduced in the 1995 Paul W.S. Anderson adaptation. It's just sort of gone on to become like, synonymous with Mortal Kombat in general. And that original theme song by the Immortals is god tier. The 2021 version from Benjamin Wolfish, who did the film score, I thought that was a pretty decent version, even though it had like a bit more of a dubsteppy kind of edge. But with this new one, which they used in the trailer, which is also released to streaming right now, I had to listen to it the other day. It's done by one of the dudes who was actually part of the Immortals. So he's basically sort of touched up, slightly changed, but kept the original format of the song intact. But now you have like the extra announcer vocals of all the characters from this film. It's a little shorter than the original Techno Syndrome because I think that one was around 3 to 4 minutes long, whereas this one is just, I think, around 2.5 minutes, maybe just shy of 3. But the film is looking like fun. The action's looking way more elaborate. way more fancy camera angles. The visuals are looking cleaner. The scope of the locations are looking bigger. And I'm liking this sort of focus on having an actual tournament. And it seems like there is some stakes involved because with the first film, because there was no tournament, even though we knew, well, mostly fans knew of the impending danger that these characters would deal with if they lost to the forces of Outworld. Now that we're in a proper tournament with Shao Kahn and a bunch of these other characters coming into the equation as well, this could be fun. I just hope that there's like a good balance between the humor and the action, and that the action is a little bit more consistent and the visuals are good. I'm liking the sort of new vibe that we've got with Johnny Cage. I just hope that everything works out. I'm still got my fingers crossed. I'm scared, but I'm happy. But Ed Boon is in the trailer. He's there as
Yeah.
a barman, and I'm like, hey, I do like it when creators of franchises do get their time to be, either a cameo, whether it be visual or maybe they get a voice role, like Charles Martinet showed up in the Mario film in the first one. So yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of course correction in the right way for this new film, but I want it to work.
You think Cole's gonna show up?
Yeah.
Hey, it's me, Cole. Remember me?
I mean, yeah, he's probably still going to be there, but I love how the advertising has kept him to the background. He has barely showed up in any sort of significant way. We can only hope that he dies like defending Earthrealm in the tournament. I hate to sound so rude about it, but again, he's like, the most plainest of white bread, like, just basic bread. Get him out of here. He has no flavor, he has no style, and his character, personality wise, was horrible. The main thing that he had going for him in his first film was that he had a family he needed to protect, and he got random gold armor and tonfas. And even then, he didn't even look cool when he was fighting. So I'm like, you're trash. So get him out of here. Let's just see more stuff going on with Jade and Katana. I want to see what's going on with Quan Chi. I want Shao Kahn to mess some people up. Is he going to do shoulder tackle? Is he going to mash people up with that big old hammer? What's going on with Revenants? There's so many questions. I need this to be good because that first film was so close to something. It has so many good things in there. It just sort of missed the mark in terms of its tone and like some of the story elements. So please.
Well, then there's Backrooms. A24 is yeah. Like I've been waiting for this one to show up like for the longest time, ever since it was greenlit, and now we're seeing it. Well, yeah, like there is that Steam game, like with A24, and even your uncle, the one that introduced him to the universe of the Backrooms was his son, right? So it is a big cultural aspect, and then now we're seeing this creepy pasta. Come on, the only thing that is quite ironic is that it's a rated R movie, and many of its fans are not entirely of age yet. They'll find a way to watch it, but by
Yeah.
themselves, I don't know. Depends on if cinemas basically cinema shouldn't care anymore, right? Like they shouldn't need butts on seats, but yeah, not being
Yeah.
unethical or anything.
I do like the look of this trailer. I think I've seen this game before, or at least like the short film that this was based on. There's a lot of games, a lot of indie games that have implemented this sort of style of being in this kind of space that's fairly vacant with like very specific lighting, with places that look like they are well illuminated in other areas that don't. And because the area is so sparse with like open rooms and doors, you're not quite sure what's going on. And it sort of leans into that horror aspect of fear of the unknown. And because there's no music, when you're walking around in these sort of spaces, I've seen a lot of like analog horror properties like implement this sort of thing where you're just in a open, clean space, not much going on, but there's random stuff just littered in the area in a way that just makes you feel unsettled because you're like, who's been here before? What's going on here? I hear a sound. What is that? And this trailer really does a good job of selling you on the idea of this sort of unknown space. And you have Chiwetel Ejiofor walking around just freaking out as this place goes on for a while. They're testing the limits of it. Clearly some weird crap is going on. You only get a quick glimpse of the sort of horrors that they're like looking into, but I think it's really well filmed. It captures that sort of aesthetic of the the short film and the games, but brings it into live action. I also like the fact that they have what looks like VCR kind of camera with that old school like visual aesthetic on there. And there's a quick glimpse of a young woman in there, and she was one of my favorite people from the Apple TV show Shrinking. So to see her in here, I'm like, yay, cool. So I'm hopeful about this film. I really hope that it's good and it gets like, sort of positive word of mouth that will, snowball and have some success. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling about it. Like, did you enjoy that trailer?
Oh yeah, definitely did. First, I thought it was like, oh, another like let's see where it goes for. And then the moment I saw the A24 logo, I was just like, they're gonna do something weird, and the kind of weird that you like, right?
Yeah.
And they gave just about enough for me to be interested in, and not too much, so that like, oh, how trailers are these days. They basically give away the whole movie, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I am looking forward to it. It is like a lot sooner than I thought it would be. So yeah, basically one of the films I'm actually more hyped about this film rather compare like Mortal Kombat 2, but I'll still watch Mortal Kombat 2, see how that goes.
Oh no, understandable. I think this property has the opportunity to do something fairly different and offer like, an experience that people aren't expecting, because with Mortal Kombat, especially with the amount of games that there are in the franchise, there's only so many different directions that they could go plot-wise, and considering the reception of the previous one, unless they happen to like knock it so far out of the park that we're blown away, I think we sort of have a rough idea of how that film will turn out. And it could still be really good, but I think there's an element of mystery that the Backrooms has in its like has an advantage to like, sort of shock and surprise people. So yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was gonna say like there was a recent news story that was of interest to me that I wanted to bring up, and that was the fact that we have directors for the upcoming Metal Gear Solid film. Now, this film has been in production for so many bloody years. I think I'd heard about this back in maybe as early as the mid 2010s, maybe even earlier than that, because I think there was even talk about a Metal Gear Solid film after, MGS 4 came out. But now we actually have directors for it, and it comes in the form of the directing duo, Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, who directed Final Destination Bloodlines. And I was like, that is a very bizarre choice in the
Mhm.
sense that looking up like their filmography outside of Final Destination Bloodlines, the other film that they worked on was a while ago, and that was Freaks from 2018.
Mhm.
Now, I haven't actually seen that film myself, but I heard it was like, a decent film, a good film to watch. But in terms of like their big feature film filmography, they only have those two main films to their like to their names. They've worked on some
Yeah.
TV stuff here and there, but this is like their first foray stepping into the video game space.
Mhm.
And for something like Metal Gear Solid, considering the complex nature of the story characters, the subject matter that it covers, you'd expect a more seasoned director to step into the chair with this, someone
Mhm.
who'd be able to confidently tell a story that
Yeah.
had depth, that had like, something that was compelling for audiences, but also be able to capture them with the action and the espionage that comes with that as well. And I'm not saying that these guys aren't going to do a good job. I'm just saying this is an interesting choice because when it comes to adaptations, I feel like in the last few years there have been some of those surprising choices when it comes to people taking on projects that you wouldn't expect. With Mortal Kombat, you had was it Simon McQuoid? He was the first time director that decided to handle the first Mortal Kombat from 2021, and he's handling the sequel. And then with the Street Fighter film, you had initially the directing duo who did Bring Her Back and Talk to Me before
Yeah.
they were taken off the projects, and it was given to was it Kaito? whose last name I've forgotten, but the Twisted Metal dude who handled those 2 episodes and the one that's handled the Eric Andre show, he's now handling Street Fighter. And again, these are just unconventional choices for these properties, but clearly they're seeing, when I say the studios are seeing something. Maybe these guys have a vision for the project that will be useful. So I'm just sort of curious. With Final Destination Bloodlines, the spectacle of that film was pretty good. I don't know if you ended up seeing that one.
Well, one thing is Zach Lipovsky's a name I haven't heard for a long time. Well, as someone who lives in Vancouver and someone who was quite active in like mid 20s, 2000s with the film, basically the film culture over there. Zach Lipovsky used to direct a lot of short films, and Crazy Eight's a local competition. He was a finalist, and I think he won with this film Crazy Late. It's like a one-shot, 10-minute film. Really high concept. He's basically late for his own wedding, and he was just scrambling all across town. So, like in a micro budget short film, he was able to have to basically tell like a succinct story, a really entertaining story, and progress that way. And then when the last time I heard of him was when he joined On the Lot, the Spielberg kind of like competition between all these you know directors. And looking that like the directing duo that they met on the Lot, and now they did with Final Destination. But to answer your question, I haven't seen Final Destination, but seeing his name again, I was like, oh, whatever happened to that guy, right? And then the moment you showed me this that they're directing Metal Gear Solid, I was going like, yeah, that's a a pretty big step up. With Metal Gear Solid is a really it's up there with Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, and all these franchises that the fans really hold dear. Like basically, you deviate a little bit from what these fans want, right? Like a pound of flesh would be asked. So this is a massive step up, and like I'm happy for them. I'm happy they're able to get this opportunity, and I really want to see what they're able to do with it. And on a very indie level, like I was impressed with Zach Lipovsky's work back in the day, and seeing when we get to see like a final cut for Metal Gear Solid, I'm definitely gonna go check it out and see where it goes.
Yeah, for sure. I think this upcoming film will also have the interesting choice of figuring out where to start, because obviously you think go with MGS1 because that's like a fairly straightforward story when compared to like the other ones, but then considering all the weird, quirky, and just game related stuff that comes with not only that game but the franchise as well, you're just like, okay, how much are they going to adapt? What are they going to strip away? Is it going to be more direct, or is it going to be a case that they just take pieces of the games and then create their own original thing? Because MGS is like a franchise that I know a good number of my friends and a number of people online, they hold that thing dear like the Bible. So any sort of notable changes I know will come with like a certain level of apprehension. So this film is going to have a certain level of scope to it. The tone will have to be correct. The music's going to have to be on point as well. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's just like there's a lot of factors to consider with this. I'm so curious. I'm excited, but I'm just like, yo, like what kind of direction are we going to take with this? Who's going to be Solid Snake, man?
Right. Well, Oscar Isaac was attached at one point, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was talked about for a while, and like that almost seemed like that was going to get off the ground, but I guess that just never panned out.
Well, really, really curious to see. Well, Resident Evil's around the corner. Zach Kreger's. Let's see where this goes. Really, like cautiously optimistic. They're saying they're keeping the lore. They're staying within the world, right? And yeah, just like Metal Gear, like let's see like how this goes and whether this is the way for adaptations to go, right? Like maybe it'll be in the Metal Gear Solid universe. Yeah.
Goodness knows, man.
At this point, anything can happen.
Yeah,
Stranger things have happened.
I think the other thing in terms of adaptations that I would like to bring up, which sort of goes back to the discussion was having about Markiplier and his success with Iron Lung, is the fact that content creator Alanah Pearce announced towards the end of March that she had launched her production company, which was called Charred Pictures, and it's basically a company that's focused on involving game developers in the adaptation of film and TV projects. So yeah, the idea that we have a content creator that has gone out of their way to create a new avenue for adaptations to be made is very interesting, because I'm paraphrasing, but the idea is now with Charred Pictures, what they're going to do is get involved with the game developers from the outset. So they'll have creative input in terms of how these films are made. And rather than going through the big rigmarole of Hollywood and how they tend to micromanage projects and then try to make something, this will be a case that the game developers will get to work with this production company to make the best product possible in terms of the adaptations. And I just find this really fun and fascinating, because not only will this allow for adaptations to be made in a different format, but also it will allow adaptations of properties that probably wouldn't have gotten off the ground. Well, things have changed a lot in the last 10 years, and you've started to see things from less popular franchises, but a lot of it is still stuff that people know. But with it being indie focused, there's a lot of indie games that I've played which I think would make for good film and TV shows. So with Alanah Pearce and her production company now, I'm very curious to see what stuff gets adapted and where it will show up, because this could either show up in the cinema or on streaming, and hopefully have that sort of feedback loop of introducing people who've not played these games to something that's interesting in whatever film or TV show format, and then maybe get them interested in going back and checking it out. But I think it's interesting that Alanah Pearce, she's been a very notable person in the games industry for a while. I don't follow her as much these days, but I was big into her happenings when she was working at IGN, and for the first couple years after she had left there. But it's just another avenue of people being able to take adaptations and do something interesting with them. So I was excited for her, and I was excited for the two projects that were announced, which I think was an adaptation of Faith the Unholy Trinity, which is a survival horror game trilogy, and what was the name of the other one? I have forgotten. I am sorry, but yeah, man,
I think the other one is Dead Take with Abu Bakar Salim.
thank you.
He came up with a video game last year, I think, Tales of Kenzero Zao. I
Oh,
don't know
that
if
was
you.
him.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember Tales of
Yeah,
Zarazal. Yeah.
yeah. And I think there's another one, The Godmother, I think.
What do you think about this? Yeah.
Well, like Iron Lung is was a challenging film to watch, but at the same time, like we need more films like that. We need more films that tackle that kind of whole independent nature of just taking back the reins from the powers that be to create the best possible piece of art that you wanted to showcase, right? Because basically what happens is that you do get some films that we get it, they're investing quite a lot in this movie to get you the best possible the resources you need to produce it, just like Mario Brothers, right? Like, I guess that's what Nintendo tried to push for. That's the vision that Nintendo wanted, right? But as you can see, like for example, like Metal Gear earlier, right? Just that example. If Hideo Kojima, like he's not part of Konami anymore, and I don't even know what the deals that went on with acquiring the property from Konami to Hollywood. But in terms of since Kojima's not an employee anymore
Yeah.
of Konami, like he won't have any creative input with where they're gonna take the Metal Gear game. Like will they be doing the whole Zack Kreger type thing where they'll take the lore and just not have Solid Snake in there and then just produce it right as part of this Metal Gear spy universe, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if it's the creators who have the power, they will be able to produce the film that's quite faithful to the source material. But then again, there's Five Nights at Freddy's.
And I mean, Five Nights at Freddy's, I think, is just a unique case because, again, those games have all the elements that you could utilize to make at least 3 or 4 different films if you really wanted to. But I think it just doesn't help that Scott, his storytelling skills are questionable. And the fact that he wrote the last 2 films and that's the way that they turned out, I think just speaks to this man's, like, quality of writing. I think he just needed, like, a supervisor or someone to rewrite the whole damn thing, except if he just gave notes instead, we could have had something solid. But I can only hope that the developers, like, behind these adaptations from Charred Pictures will have at least a more clearer goal and probably better script writers so that they can, get the best version of their games out in a way that suits the media that they're translating it into. One can only hope.
Well, as with everything else, we can only hope. Fingers crossed. Cautiously optimistic, and yeah, can't look forward to May.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess the only other thing to touch on would be the Sonic 4 teaser that dropped a little while ago. I want to say it was around mid or just after mid March that it was confirmed that Sonic 4 had gone into production with Jeff Fowler on set again with Amy's hammer, which was fun. But they also released a little teaser trailer which showed almost like you're going through a little, like, cloudy warp tunnel of all the events that happened throughout the last 3 movies, but also had a voiceover from Dr. Eggman. And clearly it seems like, something big is going to happen for this next entry. And I am very curious because fans pointed out that there was a slight little tone of Sonic Boom that was there in the music for the trailer. And much like Sonic 3, when that teaser went down, they had the teaser for Live and Learn in there. So if Sonic Boom is involved in this one, I think a lot of people are starting to put the pieces together that there's going to be some sort of time travel involved.
Mhm.
Because with the end of Sonic 3, well, spoilers for anyone that's still not seen that, we got introduced to Metal Sonic and Amy Rose. Both of those 2 characters debuted in Sonic CD back in the early 90s. So clearly there's going to have to be some sort of time travel shenanigans because one of the main gimmicks in that game is being able to travel between the future and the past and present to be able to affect the state of said worlds. Because, if you let things go bad, you'd have like a mechanical future where Eggman's sort of taken over and everything's more mechanical. But if you done the work in the game and, affected the timeline correctly, then you could make a positive future where things look a lot nicer, a lot more like environmentally clean, and without, like, Eggman's influence. So you have that element in there. So I'm curious how they're going to do the time travel shenanigans because everybody knows when it comes to time travel in films, depending on how it's done, it can either work or it can become a big wibbly wobbly timey wimey mess. So I'm curious to see how the time travel mechanics work in this, if they're going to use signposts or some other kind of thing. And because the future might be involved, there's a lot of people talking about the fact that Silver the Hedgehog from Sonic 06 could potentially make an appearance. And with the Knuckles TV show dropping the Flames of Disaster and the monster in the rock opera episode, which I think was episode 4, people assume that Knuckles went up against Iblis. So if Iblis is involved in this universe, then Silver must be in there somewhere. So there's a
Mhm.
potential chance that we could get like 2 new hedgehogs and a metal robot as well. But we'll
Yeah,
see. I think the main thing that a lot of people were hyped about, besides the Sonic CD music reference and stuff, is the fact that we got vocal confirmation that was Eggman's voiceover. So Jim Carrey is definitely coming back for this. So we're just curious. Okay, he technically died on the Ark in the last film, so we're trying to figure out how he's going to come back. If
there's a
it's
time
going to,
travel element.
yeah, so yeah, with the time, so with the time travel element now, we could get a different version of the character because, like, I feel that would be probably the best way to bring him back and not have to mess around with the sort of emotional element that they tried to implement with the last film. Because that send off with him and Stone, I was like, oh, you know what, that's nice. So
Mhm.
I hope they don't want to undo that because obviously people can find a way to come back with some BS thing, but I'm hoping that, you know,
$60 million I'd come back to.
Yeah. Sonic CD is not one of my favorite Sonic games just because I find it a little tedious to, do the whole traveling to and from, the past and present. And I'm not quite keen on the level design. I find it just a little too stop and starty for me. But there's an opportunity for them to do something cool. But I'm also curious to see who the new villain's going to be, because with time travel, it introduces so many like potential complicated elements. And Metal Sonic as a villain would be cool, but unless they're going to go really hard with him, I'm just curious. I don't know. There's too many factors in the air right now.
Yeah. There was a silhouette in the very end of the teaser, right? Like just this face, right? That they kind of teased. I don't know if you like they're showing like the emeralds, right? And they showed
Yeah.
Sonic, they showed Tails, showed Knuckles, Shadow, Amy, and then there's this face. And then it just cuts to Sonic for March 2027.
Oh yeah, there was. It's been a while since I watched it, so I actually kind of forgot about that. But yeah, um,
You
there are
think
a lot of
Rouge is gonna come
factors.
in? You think
Yeah,
Rouge is gonna come in?
possibly, but with them introducing two new characters already, I'm not too sure. Because they've only really stuck to introducing like maybe one or two per film.
Yeah.
Really depends.
And two they had Tails and Knuckles. Three they had Shadow.
Oh, I
Shadow,
see.
Shadow, Shadow, Shadow. Four. I don't know. I guess the Metal Sonics are more. I don't know if they're gonna introduce Metal Sonic as like a villain, or since the post credit scene was just Amy like destroying like a bunch of Metal Sonic armies. So is it just gonna be like just grunts, or will there be like a main intelligence Sonic, Metal Sonic? I don't know.
It depends on how they want to take the character. They could either make him the sort of second in command, or they could make him like the main villain. But Metal Sonic, even though he's really good, he just doesn't have that sort of like crazy big bad status, save for again Sonic Heroes. So I was kind of hoping that we'd go with Chaos from Sonic Adventure, because I feel like he would be a pretty good threat for like the characters to deal with. But since we've got like Amy and Metal Sonic in this one, I'm just kind of curious to see where they go.
Well, I'm looking at the IMDb page, and they have like a bunch of actors signed on, right? Like with no actual characters. Ben Kingsley, Nick Offerman, Richard Ayoade, and Matt Berry. So
Yeah,
like no characters. So
I'm very curious
these
to
are
see
big
what their
names.
roles are going to be, because with Matt Berry and Richard, I like the fact that we've got two IT Crowd alumni in there. That makes me very happy. Obviously, they've gone on to have like a lot, like fairly big careers, especially Matt Berry. Like the fact that he was even like doing voice announcement during the Oscars, that was pretty fun. But yeah, Nick Offerman, I love him. I just hope that he's not going to get like a thankless role, because depending on who you are in these films, your role could just amount to generic person who might be the opposition for Sonic for a little bit. And
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. So we'll see. I have no idea where they could go with these. I don't know. Nick Offerman being Big the Cat, that would be crazy. um, that would actually be really fun. That would be really fun for me, actually. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, because like Kristen Ritter didn't do anything in the last film.
And that's what really annoyed me, because there was a lot of people assuming that she might be like the voice of Rouge for a little while.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, to be fair, if they introduce Rouge, this technically would be the right film to do it in, but that wasn't the case. And there is a lot of things that they could have done with her to enhance her character, but we don't have time to be discussing that right now. But yeah,
Um,
is there any other things you wanted to bring up at all?
um, Not at the moment, since it's gonna be a while since that Resident Evil film, and we still got May to get out get through.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll catch you later for Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, it can't be worse than the Mario film, in theory.
I mean,
But then that's the thing. I was like, they.
still there.
I don't even know. I'm so afraid. But yeah. Oh God. But yeah, ladies and gents. if you had anything that you wanted to talk about on any of the topics that we shared, if you think we're right, wrong, or had anything to contribute, just drop it in the comment section below or hit us up where From Pixels to Celluloid is on, the socials. So you'll mostly find it on TikTok and Instagram. And yeah, the podcast is mostly on Spotify and YouTube. Please subscribe, give us good ratings. That'd be great. And Vincent, tell the people where they can find you, please.
You can find me on Instagram at Vincent Ternida, and I write for onemoregame.ph. Have a review coming up. Can't talk about it yet, but as with all my other reviews, I can't talk about any of them. But once they appear, they appear. So I guess I'll see you then.
That's great. Well, I look forward to seeing that when that shows up. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. And until the next time, we'll see you later.